There are over 20 engines here that need to be torn down, yet for some reason, I went out and bought some more this week. I actually had a goal in mind for tonight's teardown. I wanted something that checked a few boxes. For one, it needed to be simple, something I could get done in one night. The last couple teardowns took a couple nights to film. For two, I wanted something that we haven't seen on the channel before, something new, and finally, something blown up. This checks all three boxes, and we get to tear down a 5.7 liter GM Vortec V8. This came out in 1996 in the full-size truck and van. It makes 225 horsepower, 330 foot-pounds of torque, and they ran this all the way up until 2002 model year in the van. Now, this is essentially an all-iron small block V8, just like the old ones were. Obviously, there's some differences, and one of those differences is some weird spider injection stuff that never fails and never has issues. It's not necessarily true. Overall, I think these are pretty good engines. They made a ton of them, so of course you're going to see a lot of bad ones if you're in the industry, and I can't wait to see what's inside this one. There are some engines that I will go out and buy just because they have one part, but I bought this engine, or at least the thing that grabbed my attention when I was looking through engines was just one part, and that is the oil pan. It has holes in it. Lots of them, actually. But my favorite part about all of this is that someone drew an arrow to point at the hole as if the hole wasn't big enough to see without the arrow there. Oh, I might miss it. Oh, I can't see. There it is. It's right there. And, of course, on the other side, a matching arrow. Not that this wouldn't draw your attention to it anyway. You need this arrow there. The first thing that I want to do, since I can't pull the plugs, there aren't any, is see if it turns over. That's the right thing to do. And, uh-oh. I'm tightening the bolt. That's not good. Well, I don't think that's going to work, and I certainly don't want to break that off. So we're just going to say we don't know. The overall condition of this engine is pretty banged up, although it doesn't look it. Once you start looking closer, you realize that some stuff's broken. This is infinitely adjustable, so wherever you need to put it is fine. The coil's broken. Parts of the intake connector for the spider injection's broken. It's fine. The very first thing I'd like to do is pull the throttle body, and then we'll pull this upper intake apart so we can take a look at that spider injection system. Here's the fuel lines. Get these out of the way. We'll just get these out of the way. Sure seems loose. Now, it's been a long time since I worked on one of these. I don't really remember if this just comes right off. So we're going to just pull very hard on it. And there it is. So there's what the inside of the plenum looks like. GM used this spider injection system on both the Vortec V6s and Vortec V8s. And it's actually not a complicated system. It's very simple. Your fuel goes into this fuel manifold. There are 8 individual solenoids which are controlled by the PCM, essentially like injectors. They control the amount of fuel that goes to each cylinder through these plastic lines. In theory, this works great. However, this all lives in a very harsh environment. It has to deal with crankcase ventilation, with EGR, and the heat from the engine since it's in the center in the valley. And it's also very vacuum sensitive because this has to seal perfectly, this all has to seal perfectly. It has a fuel pressure regulator built into it, and it relies on manifold pressure to control that regulator. Now, I've seen these lines get brittle and crack. I've seen all kinds of issues with these. I've actually seen these engines breathe fire out of the intake, and then if you rev them, it would suck the fire back in. So let's see if we can get these injection tips out. Usually they come out. That one's going to be a pain. Oh, maybe not. Let's see if we can pull this out real quick. So yeah, that's what that looks like. I think that's why it's called the spider injector, because it has 8 legs. So do spiders. All right, now I'm going to start removing some of the stuff off the front of the engine. Just going to kind of clean this up, make it easier to work on. Well, water pump looks like it, I don't think it's original, but it doesn't look too bad. Now it's time for the dipstick. What? Several months ago, I tore down a big block 454, and in that video, many of you were not happy with the fact that I cut the EGR pipe, and I know that's a very expensive part. You can't buy it new anymore, and you can buy this one, so why would I cut that one? Well, I couldn't get it out anyway. We tried to get it off the exhaust manifolds, and it shredded the threads. That was tough to say. Shredded the threads. Anyway, it wouldn't have come off anyway. This one might not, but we're going to try. First things first. Now, I had sushi tonight, so see if that was enough. Look at that. Now I need to remove the other side of this EGR line from the intake. Now we can start to pull the lower intake. There's some weird stuff that was in there. It looked like a piece of grass or something. That's driven off the cam. Now we need to pull the valve covers to get the intake off. Now I can lift the intake off. Well, at first glance, it's hard to really tell anything, but you can see that the intake gaskets were getting a little weak right here. And right here is starting to fail. So coolant goes through here. I think intake gaskets are pretty common failures on these things. That's normal. So outside of that, checking the valve train here. Nothing's too crazy on this side, but that one's pretty loose. And then I like to turn the push rods, see if any of them are bent. The ones that I can. I don't see any bent ones. The intake ports all look pretty good. I think there's might have been some water in here at some point. It's hard to tell if that was water or coolant. There's some rust like on the top of that valve. And nothing wild yet. Now there is a whole bunch of built up junk. I don't know, it feels like sealant. And it looks like some shiny oil, sparkly oil. And on the passenger head. Now I do hope the heads made it because I think that's the only value in this engine, the cylinder heads. All right, now I'm going to pull the rockers and then the push rods. I like to look at how shiny the ball ends are of the push rods, because if they don't have a mirror finish and they look more like a brushed finish, it means they haven't been rotating. These all look pretty adequate. Does it all look okay? Time to crack the head bolts loose. Oh, these might not make any sound. I lied. It's odd that it seems the bolts on this side of the engine are tighter. Now this head should come right off. And it's going to be heavy too. Okay. Blue. Well, back of the engine, things look all right. And that cylinder's, the piston's a little cleaner than the others, but then, wait a minute. There we go. Some valve marks there. And it clearly struck the cylinder head as it cleaned all of the carbon off the crown of that piston. Let's go look at the head. Well, let's see if we can get this head gasket off of here. Alright, well there's the combustion chamber, and you can definitely see it's going to have a bent valve. See the impact mark from making contact with the piston. There's a clean part of the head. That valve is probably bent too. And the other cylinders, maybe a little bit of moisture. Not terrible. One of the things we'll look for when I get the other head off is cracks in these heads. Now we're going to play the game of connecting or disconnecting rod. That one's there. That one's there. That one's gone. That's a disconnecting rod. The rest of them still very connecting. Let's go to the other side. Now, unfortunately, these head bolts really don't make a lot of noise, and they're all about the same tension. So I'm just going to zip these out with my impact. It's going to be fine. Okay, I'm going to give this a little help here. Hopefully that's enough. About that. Huh. Okay, so what's going on here? That piston has marks on it, and it's a disconnecting rod. That has marks on it, and it's turned at a 15-degree angle or something like that, and it's definitely made contact with the head and valves. Well, there certainly was a lot of water in here, and that's no longer connected. You can see the marks on that piston, and then obviously that one's got a broken rod. That one looks okay. Let's go look at that cylinder head. So that's probably going to have bent valves, making so much contact with the piston. And a lot of rust in that cylinder, just like what we saw in the block. And that, too, has marks on the valves. Now, I don't think that means these heads are junk by any stretch, but this is a little concerning. I don't know if this is from coolant or water. Now let's get the front of this engine apart. Well, I've got my puller set up. Hopefully this works. Just going to get it snugged up. Oh, is it really coming off already? No way. Yeah, let's get something a little stronger. That worked. Now we can peel this timing cover off. Next, let's see if we can get this cam gear off. Now, the chain does have some play, but I don't know if that's normal or not. No idea how many miles are on this engine. What is going on here? Oh, it's that easy. Man, look at that chain. Before we can slide the cam out, I need to pull the lifters. So let's get this out. Okay. That one seems slightly angry. So we're just gonna leave that there. Does this one come out? I need a better pair of pliers. As long as they're up, that should be fine. Okay, let's get this cam plate out. Now, this might be a fight. That cam doesn't even want to rotate, so I think what I'm going to do is we'll deal with that once we get everything else apart, and now we'll drop the pan and catch all the engine excrement, see everything that's in the pan, and then we'll flip the bottom end over. Oh no, I can't get to some of these bolts. I'm just going to turn this thing on its side for a second. Let's get this bracket out of the way, and I'll show you why I can't get the bolts out. Watch out. Well, because of how this thing blew up, it distorted the pan to where I can't get on that bolt, that stud, or that bolt right there. So we're just going to use this here and kind of fix it real quick. Ah, that works way better. Almost there. This one is still a problem. I think we're good now. Now I need to be gentle. Oh. Well, there's lots of stuff in here. Mainly chunks of rods. A lot of rod stuff. Oh, there's like this paste at the bottom of the pan. So here's what the inside of the pan looks like. And, well, there's not too much of that metal paste, but ooh, there's a big chunk. That's a section of rod. This is all rod here, all iron. I don't see any aluminum in here yet. Sparkly oil. A lot of sparkles. Oh, that might be a piece of aluminum. Look at the sheen on my gloves there. Now we can flip this thing upside down. What though? Oh, it just pooped some parts out. There's a part of a rod. Oh, and another part of a rod. The nut's still good. Now, I'm not saying it would, but it could leak. What? I don't know. Oh, you're just going to do what you want to do. Okay. Well, let's get that anyway. Well, there's a couple things jumping out at me. The first thing is, what is this O-ring for? That looks important, but I don't know where that goes. I don't know these engines well enough, so we're just going to put it right there. The other thing is, oh my God. Well, wow. I didn't realize it, but the block is broken. Let's get this out of the way. So this rod is jammed into the side of the block, and it has cracked the block up to about, all the way up to here. It's cracked in multiple areas. Let's see if we can get this pan gasket out of the way. There's a better look at it. Yeah, see, it's in good shape. So this rod was just in a jousting match. It's just jamming in everything it could. I mean, it literally wrecked everything in its way. Both sides of the block, the top, bottom of the bores, the pistons. It's destroyed. Yeah, I mean, to punch through this and do that kind of damage, I'm sure it was just idling in the driveway. They're just letting it warm up in the morning. And it just did that. It's just what happened. So, yeah, we'll get back to that. We're going to get the oil pump, windage tray out of the way, and see if we can actually get this thing apart. We might not be able to get this apart, but I do have a loader. Now you can see the screen is not plugged up, so this wasn't a situation where it had a bunch of debris in here. Let's get this windage tray up and then we'll pull the pump. Now we can pull the oil pump. And so the way the oil pump works, the camshaft drives this, which in turn drives the distributor and the oil pump. So, yeah, as you can see, this is catastrophic. Then there's another broken rod here. And it looks like that rod is jammed into the bottom of that bore. And look at that damage. I think the first thing I'm going to do is try to pull the broken pistons with broken rods out. No, I don't need to be gentle. So there's one. Wow, ooh, this one's even got pieces inside of it. All right, I think we've got one more that might come out on its own. I might be wrong there. Oh yeah, we got it. Yeah, there's a bearing. And there's a couple pieces of aluminum. So now it's time to pull all of the still connected rods and pistons out. And we should be able to get to all the bolts. I don't see any that will fight us too bad. This one might be a little tricky here. But I'm hoping that as we get this apart, I can try a few things and get the crank unstuck. So anyway, we're going to start at the most forward connecting rod and work our way back. You always want to go front to back. Okay, so it looks like this nut is distorted here. That sounds wrong. So we're just going to use this hammer. Oh, now I can't get that out. Maybe. Ha ha, no. Oh, I think that's the one that's filled with rust. Yes. So we're going to have to be extra careful with that one. How could I be so careless? You gotta be close. Well, I promise I didn't do any more damage to something that was useful.
Oh, come on.
Just a little tap. Should be able to get this one out, no problem. That is not moving. Realistically, I think I have one more I can get out maybe. I'm going to work now to try to get the crank to turn over. It should go this direction, so clockwise. Let's try a couple things here. Let's see if old blue will come through for us. No. No. Not really a lot of other places to pry. Let's get something a little bit bigger. I have a feeling this engine stand may not be adequate. No, that's not going to work. I guess we could try. Come on. Well, it's out-ish. Look at that. It's perfect. Yeah. All right. So, it looks like we just have 2 rods and pistons and the mains, and then I can deal with the rest of this once that's out of the way. Well, I think I can get that one rod I got unbolted already out. This one won't come out. I don't know why. Well, that was not convenient. Now there's one left to get out before I can get this apart. Turns over easy now. And that's just gonna come out with the crankshaft. Now we just have the main caps and we can pull the crank. Oh, come on. It's gonna be like that. Okay. Well, I don't even know where to start here. I guess we'll start with the bearings. So those were bearings, and even the ones that survived, they don't look all too great. They are pretty torn up, and I would wager that the holes in the oil pan were actually escape routes for some of the parts. I would imagine it did scatter some things on the road or wherever this thing blew up. But then you get to the pistons, and I mean, the wrist pin's perfect. It's always the case. That's the worst piston, I think. The opposing cylinder definitely took some hits too. There's not one surviving rod and piston from this engine at all, which is why I took it apart the way I did. There's no reason to even tiptoe around the fact that it was all blown up. There's some heavy damage to the skirts. I did not expect to see another one blown up here in the middle. So I don't know. I mean, there's still parts of the rod on the crank in 2 different locations. This is the one that did the most damage here. But we can't discount this because this really, I mean, look at how the end of that is just forged. It's hammered into it's just a destructive tool at this point. And the crank saw quite a bit of damage. Of course, I still have 2 sections of rods. We'll try to get those off here in a minute. And the journals don't look good. None of this looks good. And I mean, all of the wrist pins, none of them move super freely. I mean, I guess some of them move okay, but not great. And then you get to the main bearings, same story. There's stuff run through there or lack of oil. I'm pretty sure the reason I couldn't get the cam out was the fact that it was attacked brutally by some rods. And it's all mangled up in here. We are going to try to get this out. I did turn those rockers, or those lifters, sideways in an attempt to pull them up, but I couldn't get them up. Sounds like a personal problem. You can see the bottom of the bores chewed up there, really chewed up here. That cam's going to be smoked. Main bearings, the top half's not so great either. And then there's the major impact. And over here, it did some damage, and then on the opposing side, a little more, but the front two were definitely the worst. All right, now we're going to try to pry the cam. Don't ever work on your engine like this unless it's junk like this one is. Well, we moved it, but I don't think we're going to get it much further than this. I bet there's a lifter or something. I'm going to get my punch. We're going to try to smack these lifters up. I think it's working. They still don't want to come out of the bore, but the fact that I pushed the cam forward gave me better access with this punch. All right, let's see if that made a difference. That might have been a total waste, but we don't know. Ha! All right, now we just have to carefully guide this junk cam out of here so we can look at it. Well, you can see the cam bearings don't look that great. And there's lots of metal chunks and debris, which is probably why I couldn't get those lifters out. Yeah, it was tough. The cam wasn't really as bad as I expected for getting hit with rods at probably 4,000 RPM. That's the worst ding right there. And I think there's a couple others. You're on the edge of that, the peak of that lobe there. A couple more there. And one right there. But really not bad considering what happened inside this engine. All right, now we're going to try to remove the two broken pieces of rod. I don't know if that's going to actually work or not. This one's already off. Let's see if we can get the nuts off of this one. This one's pretty banged up. It might not come off. Oh, yeah. All right, it's a sacrificial 9/16. We're going to hammer it on. Well, that's super chewed up. Wow, that's much worse than I expected. I expected it to be bad. That's worse. That's worse than bad.
You're so close.
Golly, what a fight for that. So there's the journal damage. And no, there's not a bearing on this side. This is both the journal size. This is the side that the rod just chewed up. I'm sure this ran as long as possible before it locked up. That's the only way to get that kind of damage. And the rest of the journals, I mean, they're just not great. And there's the bearing that came out of that side that just chewed that journal up. This is the one that did most of the damage. This part of the rod here, it broke both sides of the block. It's impressive. So here are the bores. And of course, the bottom is pretty rough. Actually looks like it's cracked at the bottom. It is. Bottom of that bore is cracked. That's the front of the block. That's the one with rust. Lots of heavy scoring, just like you would expect. Yeah, you can see that it's worn through the cross hatching. This didn't all just happen at once. This was a prolonged destruction. This engine could have had some miles on it. You guys hear that sound? It's like a ticking sound. And my oil pressure gauge is all the way down, but that doesn't matter. That hasn't worked in years. Here, let me put my foot to the floor, and maybe it'll clear itself up. Oh, hey, that was loud, and there's a puddle of oil on the ground, and smoke's everywhere. The engine's off, and it literally just sounded like someone christened 40 champagne bottles at the same time. That's probably the story of this engine. There is no way that this engine gave zero warning signs. It had lights on the dash, sounds, the smells, the smoke, the loss of power, all of it. It had all of the senses were affected, but yet the driver tried to power through it, just like the engine tried to power through its rods. I think what happened here is it deleted a rod bearing, and from it hammering on the crankshaft from lack of a bearing being there, it shattered at the bottom of the rod, and those parts went through the rest of that engine, and it took out a couple other rods along the way. And those rod ends did a lot of damage. I mean, a lot of damage to that block. I had to hammer the lifters out of it, and I had to pry the cam out of it. That's a first. There have been engines where I haven't been able to get that out before, so maybe it's not as bad as those. But somehow, through all the smoke, I was able to get a pair of possibly buildable Vortec heads. Sure, they need some work, and I got to check for cracks, but still, for something that catastrophic to happen and maybe get some sellable parts, I call that a win. I bought that engine for the video expecting there to be no parts that survive, but I think I got my cake and I get to eat it too. So if you'd like to buy those heads, or if you want to buy a good running Vortec 5.7 in this 98K 2500 or anything else off this truck, or maybe anything else that you're looking for your car, you can go to Importapart.com, or you can email us. I'll leave our email in the video description. If you go to our website and you don't see what you're looking for, you can just send a request form. We can fill it all out so that I know what you're looking for, and we'll let you know if we've got it or not. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.